Well, it was comrades like Tony Mulhearn who we'll be paying tribute to tonight, and the rest of the militant, including Socialist Party members here this evening, who in the course of the mighty Liverpool struggle against Thatcher translated socialism into the language of jobs, housing and services for thousands of young and working class people. But what language does capitalism speak to the millions of students and young workers living in Britain today? What kind of world are the young people in this hall on track to inherit on the basis of yet another Tory government being returned to number 10 this winter? A world where young workers pay over half their wages, sometimes as high as 70% of their pay, straight into the pocket of the landlord. A world where young people work on demand at the snap of the fingers of the bosses through 0 hours contracts. A world where you leave university with the knowledge that you might be forced to work until you're 75. It means alienation, desperation, and exasperation for young people everywhere, applying to hundreds of jobs a week, only for the chance to be paid so little that we have no chance of living any sort of independent life whatsoever. A world in which university tuition fees and student debt hang around the necks of hundreds of thousands of students and would-be students. And the Tories, by the way, are far from being satisfied with making students pay thousands of pounds a year for their education. Already, the ground has been prepared for a new raft of attacks, which could potentially provoke a new and fresh revolt over the question of free education. They include lowering the income threshold for the repayment of student debt and extending the repayment period from 30 to 40 years. Essentially, it amounts to a plan to shackle even lower paid graduates in a lifetime's worth of debt. Theresa May's parting message at the time that it would be up to the next government to decide whether or not to implement the plans, leaving the fates of potentially millions of graduates hanging in the balance. But what does all of this mean practically? What it means, all your life, work for your boss, work for your landlord, work for your right to live, and work until you're dead. But young people know instinctively, as Paula said, that something is deeply wrong with the way that our society is organised on the basis of capitalism. Since we met in this hall this time last year, we've witnessed an almost spontaneous explosion of students when tens of thousands of school, college students moved into action on the monthly climate strikes. Walkouts which demanded system change to end climate change, but also the demands of a layer of students on those marches and walkouts were much more ambitious than simply a habitable planet to live on. They demanded action over austerity in schools, for a fully funded NHS, for votes at 16. Young people are struggling for a future worth living. And it's the same the world over, from Chile to Lebanon to Iraq. The children of the financial crash, as the Guardian newspaper put it, are moving into action and are taking to the streets. The Socialist Party and Socialist students have fought vociferously within the climate strike movement to win a new generation of activists to the ideas of socialism and Marxism, not for one moment dipping the banner of revolutionary ideas or action. And on the campuses, Socialist Students is the only national organisation which points students clearly in the direction of revolutionary ideas. And when the 2010 student movement against the trebling of tuition fees, when it grew and eventually shrank, with it came and went a whole host of left organisations on the campuses. But we've outlasted each and every one of those organisations. Even look at the NUS today. The so-called official leadership of the student movement, the future looks murky. We've sunk our roots into the campuses, we've built our student groups on the campuses across the country, and now we're the only national organisation holding the line in the fight for free education, for decent student housing, and for an end to austerity on campus. And what that means is that we're ready for this general election. We're ready to launch a socialist voter registration drive on the campuses, linked to the fight for a Corbyn-led government with a socialist programme. A government which will abolish tuition fees, cancel student debt, reintroduce living grants, and guarantee for students a decent job and a home after leaving university. We're ready to campaign, demonstrate, and occupy for all of these policies and more. We're ready to organise joint students and workers' meetings on the campuses with CWU and UCU workers who, as we speak, are preparing to take strike action in the face of a crumbling Tory government. These are all aspects, by the way, of our socialist general election campaign, which we're going to be running on campuses. We'll be discussing at the Socialist Students' National Conference in Birmingham on the 30th of November. But I'll finish on these points. What we won't be preparing to do is door knock and campaign for Blairite right-wing Labour candidates. People who, for now, are happy to drape themselves in the popularity of Corbyn's leadership, but tomorrow will try their best to sink the knife in to his back if he makes it into Downing Street. Which is why Corbyn's election will only be the beginning of a much more intense battle. A battle not just to defend his programme from pro-capitalist sabotage, but potentially the opening up of a life and death struggle for the system of capitalism itself. That's what we want to build. And to achieve that, we're going to build a powerful student movement, fused with the even more powerful workers' movement, armed with a socialist programme to get rid of the Tories and get rid of them once and for all. To build a movement which will abolish capitalism and, for the new generation, translate socialism into the language of jobs, homes, services, free education, and a future worth living.